Today, I'm not going to mess around. We have a fun topic to discuss: rebranding. I feel like rebranding is this perfect mix of art and science and execution. It's equal parts objective and subjective. And the stakes are wild. They can range from just a small business refresh to this company is going under if this doesn't work. So lots to get into, but first, a word from our sponsor. How would you like to spend the rest of your life? No, for real. Why save for tomorrow when you can spend today? I'm talking about anti-retirement, the revolutionary program where waiting is overrated and spending is celebrated. Why pinch pennies, grind, and sacrifice for some distant retirement future? The stock market, climate change, global political unrest, the future sure is a wacky mystery. So why leave your best years to a maybe?
Last week, I was thinking about my retirement fund, but then I realized, why wait 30 years to go to the Bahamas when I can go now? So I booked a last-minute trip, upgraded to first class, and bam! Instant happiness and no regrets at all.
I thought, should I invest in stocks or mutual funds? Or should I treat myself to that designer jacket I've been eyeing for months? Who needs compound interest when you've got Himalayan cashmere? I'm not crying, they're happy tears.
Saving is smart, but spending is genius. Here's the thing. It's not looking great out there. So why risk it on a maybe when you can definitely buy something today? Welcome to Almost Productive, a podcast mostly about marketing. I'm Sean.
I'm Julie.
And I'm Addie.
And we are all marketing professionals at New Boston Creative Group in Manhattan, Kansas. So before we get into this fun topic, I've got some random questions for us to go through. We've covered a lot on these little fun topics, but there's still more to dive into. So to start us off, I would like to know, how long do you think you'd survive in a zombie apocalypse?
Okay, so this might be a hot take because I do not have a lot of useful skills in this scenario. But I think I can't give you a timeline, but I will say I think I would last longer than the average person. I think that, this feels like kind of tooting your own horn thing to say, but I feel like I'm a genial person. Like, I'm a nice person. I'm easy to get along with, pretty go with the flow, but I can be a leader when I need to be. I think that I would ingratiate myself with the correct group of people, and that would be my move.
I like the idea that your ability to like fit in and read people and be friendly, like others will protect you even. Like, you're going to handle yourself, but on top of that, you're going to have other people want to protect you because you're so awesome.
I think that's the vibe that I would be going for.
I think I agree with you. I think that would absolutely happen.
I also like that you don't take into account the zombie reaction to you. You're just like, I'm going to be fine with fellow humans. So, are the zombies out there going, kind lady,
Perhaps. I don't know what their prerogative is or mental capacity, but I would love to hope so.
Julie, do you have initial thought on this?
My knee jerk was 6 months. Like,
specific.
Well, it did ask how long, and I don't really have an answer, but I usually have an emergency kit in my car. So it depends on how densely a lot. It depends.
Right. There is a lot.
I could overthink this. Yeah. But like how densely populated of an area am I in? How many farms or food production places are nearby that I could get off the grid, sustain for a little while? A lot of questions.
Yeah. It's a good point that like being in Kansas, maybe we, or at least me being in Kansas, have a little bit of an edge because, less of a population and a quick drive. And I'm with the cows who are not zombies in this situation. And maybe I'm okay for a little bit longer before I see a zombie crawling through a cornfield and then I have to, make a move that way. It's a good point.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be fine, Sean.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, Julie, in that I think I'll make it a decent amount of time based upon, location, less people to be zombies to attack me. I'm similar to Julie in that, or not Julie, to Addie in that my skill set is not great for dealing with zombies overall. I don't have guns. I'm not a camper. I'm not an out, in the wilderness person. But similar to Addie, I keep my head on a swivel. I feel like I can, be a good leader if I need to and scrounge around enough to make
You
it.
can read a room.
Right. I can read a room a little bit. I feel like I'm maybe easier to talk into than Addie. So I might fall in with a group that is just trying to eat me and I don't realize it until it's too late. But if I keep to myself for just a small grouping, then I think I'm giving myself that 6 months to a year. And then maybe I'm lucky enough to stumble upon some sort of compound that we can make it longer. All right. Final question. And I've got more caveats for this one as well. What would you do if you only had 24 hours to live? However, I'm not looking for the lame answers of spending time with my family and my loved ones. And I always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. No, okay. You got to do all of that already. You knew a month in advance this was going to happen. So you took care of all the sappy stuff already. So now it's just you have 24 hours. You can do whatever you want. This includes something illegal if you would like, because there's no tomorrow. So what would you do? Would you do something like rob a store because it doesn't matter?
I would not do anything that would cause others harm. So I'm robbing a store, even if no one's injured, it's damaging to people. So I don't know that I would go that route.
You're so kind.
This is hard. This is a hard question. I mean, my first thought was I would just go find a bunch of puppies and hang out with puppies, and that would be happy. That would be a really happy 24 hours. Although 24 hours, I'd probably only need 2 or 3 and then be okay, I'm going to go take a shower now. But that was where my brain went at first.
I mean, I feel like I should be okay, here are all of the passwords that you need.
But you've done that already.
Right.
That's over.
Right,
You've
right.
taken care of that.
So,
Right. Because, I also had the thought of I don't want to hurt anybody, but maybe I would want to try to do some things I wasn't allowed to do. And I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm in some business and the door says employees only. And I'm just nope, I'm going to walk in that one today. I want what's behind this door. We're going to figure it out.
That's a good answer. Or maybe at a museum, they have all of those doors that are locked with all of the stuff that's not put out. You could go, that's the lamest answer ever, but I think that would be really interesting too.
what if you did a From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frank Weiler and spent the night in a museum, but then you died, so they find your body the next morning?
You just create a mystery.
What if you did something like aggressive helping, where, you're standing outside of Target and you're like, here, let me carry that for you. And people are really freaked out and they're like, no. And so you cause disruption, but in a kind of a kind, sweet way.
I like that. Yeah. All right. Enough fooling around. Let's get back to the topic at hand. Rebranding. So to sort of set the stage, just here's what rebranding is. Here's the dry definition. So the process of changing the corporate image of an organization. Now, that could mean the literal image, so the logo. So just a standard visual rebrand, changing your logo, your colors, other aesthetics that go with it. But then there's sort of the larger sort of image of a company. What is their mission, their audience? What are their goals, their vision? So like I talked about at the beginning, your rebranding can cover a wide range of areas of your business. And so I think one of the first things to get into is why companies might feel the need to rebrand. And I'll start off with you guys if you've got some off the top of your head on why a company might think about rebranding.
I think a big one that comes to mind is if a company tried to really embrace something super trendy, a couple years later, it looks completely outdated and terrible. So yeah, not naming names, but that might be a good reason that they want to take a new look and maybe think about doing something a little more classic or timeless.
Yeah, or if they want to shift, like, hey, when we started, people were interested in, X, Y, or Z, but now people are more interested in ABC and we need to roll with the times. Our audience is changing or their needs and wants are changing. So kind of evolving with their own individual markets, I think would be another reason.
Right. You see a business start off with they're selling this particular thing, and then they find their business is growing and they want to expand into other areas, and they find that their current branding is too narrow, and they need to sort of shift it. You also see businesses who start off and they're very small, and so they didn't spend a lot of time on the logo and the overall branding, and they just need to sort of level up. They, spend a little bit more money on a nicer logo and actually bring in some other elements to expand upon that business. Some of the things that I noted were perception. So if your company is perceived at doing one thing, it can be hard to then add additional services or products because you've sort of been pigeonholed. Or if you've got a lot of negative perception towards your company and you sort of need to like hit the brakes and regroup and sort of rebrand yourself to reemerge in the marketplace to try to overcome that perception, were other things that I noted. So next, I figured we would get into sort of the process. So you're looking to rebrand your company who's thinking about it. What are the necessary steps? And I think it's very similar to all of, the different types of marketing. You're doing very similar things. You're doing research and strategy, the execution, the launch. But with the rebrand, I feel like each step is so vital and they each build on each other so much that you can easily trip up by messing with one of them. So when you're doing that initial research phase, really figuring out who your company is, what it's trying to be, and then what your customers think about your business is vitally important in moving forward. Because if you get that wrong, none of the rest of it's going to work. You really need to know who you are and then why people like or dislike or what they like about you, because you need to build upon that. Or if you're trying to change, how do we shift around that? And so the research stage is really important when it comes to the rebrand.
Yeah, if you don't talk to your customers, your customers, most businesses, that's your heart of your business are your customers. So if you don't talk to them, consult them in some form or fashion, and then you move from point A to point B, and 80% of your customers loved you because of point A, then that's a huge mass that you're going to lose.
That then leads into you've done all your research. Now you need to come up with your plan. The logo is like the main one that everybody sort of thinks about and is the one that's going to catch everybody's attention. But it doesn't have to be the thing that you focus on for your rebranding. Sort of, as I mentioned, you could think about, is it the mission of the business? Is it the messaging? Is it all the branding elements around the logo? Maybe your current logo is fine, but everything that goes around it, as far as your marketing materials for your emails, your commercials, your posters, those are the things that need updated. The branding touches on so many different aspects of your business, because if you decide you're going to change the logo, for some business that means like the logo's painted on every truck that you own. It's on every billboard. It's on everyone's shirt. It's on the hats that are stitched. Like there's so many elements that need to be under consideration for where this brand is going to touch. And so you really need to think through every one of those stages. And so it's a lot of work. But as I said, like you really need to plan all of this out because you don't want to half bake it.
And there's also the intangible aspect of branding that a lot of companies don't even think about, and that's the customer journey. Is their experience with you, is how they're interacting with you going to change as a result of this rebranding? Are you now the friendliest option out there? Are you the most dependable? Are you the most serious? Are you shifting Are you trying to shift how you're perceived in the marketplace? And if so, you need to think about not just where you are visually, but how people are interacting with you at every stage of working with you.
And along with that shift, you need to consider your current brand recognition. So is this shift moving so far away from your original concept and business and look and feel that your existing customers won't realize that it's you after this is done? Or how do you work to make that kind of more fluid and continuous?
Right. This sort of leads into the final stages, which are the execution and the launch. So you've now, figured out what your customers think about you, what you want from the company, what all the changes are going to be. Now it's developing the final logo, getting that messaging. What is the tone going to be, and deciding all that, and then launching it in a way that's going to make sense for people and will get in front of them so they know that this change is happening. And so a lot of times you do see, even if a company is just changing their tone or their sort of messaging, they do a little visual update as sort of the marker of, yep, we're changing. That's why our look at least slightly changed, so other things are changing. And we'll see examples here. I'll talk about them of people who they changed one aspect, but then did like a little bit of a visual update versus only changing the visuals, and sort of everything else sort of followed with it. But yeah, the execution is and the launch can be key. And one of the things you can do to sort of get in front of that is start sort of prompting and preempting people that change is coming. It doesn't have to be a one day you're your old look and the next day you're the new look. You can roll it out more slowly. You can let people know change is coming in the future. You can even start, providing emails or other messaging ahead of time to let people know that this rollout is going to happen, depending on what the product or service is. And that way you're not scaring your customers if one day they log into your website and everything is different and they don't know where anything is. It doesn't have to be sort of an all or nothing venture.
Oh, and that makes me think too, as part of your research and strategy phase, before you execute, to do some market research with your proposed rebrands, because there have been major like egg in the face examples where it's like, did they talk to anyone about this? Did they think this was a good idea? So to actually, get feedback on your concepts before you put them everywhere, in case there would be a big backlash.
And in the execution phase, back to Sean's point of doing that well and kind of teasing it to your customers, letting them know that something is coming, that's a great opportunity for you to control the narrative and share more with your customers, your audience, about why this change came to be, especially if it's a mission or value situation.
Right. As a sort of little side anecdote, we did a rebranding for a city several years back where during the process, the community knew the new logo and branding was coming, and they were informed of the process along the way, what the decisions were being made, and then were even presented with drafts of potential options that they could weigh in and provide feedback. So when the new logo came out, they were already prepped for it. They knew the options. They got a chance to provide their feedback, so they felt some buy-in. And when the rollout eventually happened, everybody was excited about it and happy about it, because it wasn't like, oh, we made the decision for you. I hope you're happy with it. They were able to be felt as they were part of that process.
What a great idea. What a smart way to roll that out.
Yeah.
They must have hired someone pretty good at this whole marketing thing.
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah, if I can remember who that was, I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect.
Now, I think it's time to get into some famous successes and failures with rebranding, because that's really what this is about. This is the fun stuff. I guess off the top, do you guys have any favorites before I get into my list?
Well, I got a little peek ahead, but I was thinking the Gap rebrand. I remember that, like, for whatever reason, people were really upset about that one. So that kind of stuck out for me, the Gap one.
This is super recent, so I don't have any knowledge of whether it will be effective or not, but Snapchat is kind of in the process of rebranding. It's calling itself like the anti-social media, like get off of social media, get on to Snapchat. So it's like more of a communicating with your friends kind of, and messaging versus watching and following strangers. So that'll be kind of interesting to see how that plays out.
That will be interesting. Yeah, so we can start with the Gap. That I also remember that one. That one was sort of prime in, I had just not totally fresh out of college, but like I'm fresh in my professional career, and this was like a big rebrand that rolled out. So this was in 2010, and they tried to modernize their logo, and they went about it by taking this sort of iconic logo of the Gap and the serif in this blue box, which is very simple, but it has enough sort of personality and tradition, and they just completely modernized it with very bland typeface that just said Gap, and then there's like weird blue box in the corner, and it's a good example of there was probably so much effort that went into everything surrounding that logo. There was probably messaging and design and all sorts of stuff, but the logo was what everybody saw, and that was enough to just completely sink the whole thing. And they ended up with such a backlash that they had to roll it back and revert it. It didn't last a week before they were like, oops, and had to undo it.
I mean, that's a real don't fix what isn't broken. Like Nike's had the swoosh forever, and there's a reason for that. It's iconic. That's a great word, Sean. And it's recognizable. It works for them, similar to Gap's snafu before they rolled out their new one. But if you don't need to update, then you don't need to update. And there's a way to do, there's a way to change things like your mission and value statements without changing your logo.
Another famous failure is Tropicana. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but they redesigned their packaging. They had a very famous, very sort of like floral typeface with an orange with a straw in it, and they redesigned into this very minimal, lot of white space, sort of stark look, and everyone hated it because it lost all that personality, and they ended up looking sort of like a generic brand, and similar that they had to revert back because their sales dropped 20% in just a few weeks, and ended up having to undo all of that, which is even worse because if you consider all the packaging that had to be printed, and then they just had to dump and redo it all. A very expensive mistake.
It's kind of a testament to what I talked about just a little bit briefly at the beginning of the episode, was like trying to be very modern or hip in the moment. 2009, 2010, I feel like a lot of white space was very trendy and in, and both of those brands tried to do something that was a little more leaning that way, and it completely backfired. So trendy is not always the way to go.
Yeah, something about that time, because my next on the failures is from 2008, which is Pepsi, which was a giant one that everyone was waiting for. Like people knew this was coming, and they rolled out this new Pepsi logo, and it was just mass confusion on everyone's part of, having, again, an iconic logo. There's nothing wrong with it. And they somehow managed to mess it up. To the point where, it was basically just ridiculed. And obviously now they don't use that logo anymore. They had to, again, another case of having to roll it back because it was just so missing the mark of what people wanted. They had this whole like elaborate imagination around the symbol where it would change. Like they described it as like this smile where those sort of colors in the white space meet, and then that would move around. Yeah. So there were like different versions of, like, it was so complicated. But like in and of itself, it doesn't mean anything. And it just changes the brand. It changes the look. Like the logo's different all the time. Like it doesn't make sense. All right. We'll shift into some successes. So one of the key ones, or not key ones, but one of the top ones is Old Spice, who for a while was just a, old men sort of brand. And this is a good example of a company who did a rebrand, but less so on the visual end. They changed all of the messaging, the tone in their commercials, and they became this very sort of hip, irreverent, trendy brand. But when you look at their actual like logo and their branding, it is still sort of that old timey look with the ships and stuff. They didn't try to modernize that aspect of it, but instead kept that. But then in all of their messaging and their commercials, they're very silly, and they sort of changed the tone and the feeling around them overall.
And those things are easier to be timely with. Like, it's easier to produce a timely, trendy commercial or social media campaign versus redoing your entire logo. That's, a much taller mountain to climb. So updating the elements around the logo can be, just as, if not more effective.
In a similar vein, we have Dunkin' Donuts, which basically dropped the word donuts from the name. And again, they're not changing everything, because like if you look at the logo before and after, it's pretty much the same logo without the word the donuts in it. And they were already sort of priming people with their slogan, which was already like the world runs on Dunkin'. So the donuts was already sort of being passed off, and so they were able to sort of transition into letting people know that they weren't just donuts. They were this larger coffee brand who wanted to compete with Starbucks.
What was the impact of that, Sean? Just out of curiosity.
I happen to have that right here.
Really?
They went from 1.6 billion cups of coffee in 2019 to 4.4 billion in 2021.
That's a lot of billions of cups of coffee.
Yeah, they've definitely exploded their brand since then. And they've done larger efforts with changing their stores and how all that's done as well. Like for them, it reaches outside of just what we sort of see as far as advertising goes. And then finally, I like to mention, this is one that I noticed. Pizza Hut back like when I was a kid had a very sort of timeless, well, I don't even know if you'd say it was timeless. This very like home style look with the checkerboards and the textured glasses and the stained glass lights. And
didn't they have the roof line?
Right. They've got their famous roof line, and they decided at some point that was too old and they needed to be, again, modern and streamlined all that and removed all that personality from it. And you saw their business sort of slump because of it, and people no longer felt that connection to them. And just a few years ago, you got to see them bring all of that back very slowly, where now in all the commercials, all that checkerboard and that style and personality is starting to creep back, and they're doing away with that modern look. And so I think that's an interesting case of trying something, realizing it's not working, and then being smart enough to go back and try to bring that, what worked back into your business, and realizing you sort of made an error.
But if you do the research phase correctly, hopefully you won't make those terrible, terrible mistakes and costly mistakes.
Right.
One we didn't talk about, but did okay, despite I think there was maybe initial backlash, is Google. And to begin with, they went from, a serif font to a sans serif font. So it was really logo-centric when they streamlined things. But I also think as they've built from just being a search engine to having their tentacles in every aspect of our lives, they've rebranded services in a way that some of these other examples we haven't really touched on, because they're, Dunkin' changed, but some of them are core to what they were doing. But Google has continued to expand and evolve. Although they're in an antitrust lawsuit now, I think. So, it's not always a good thing to grow.
Right. I think that brings up a good sort of final point, which is the success of a rebranding isn't always immediate. And and sometimes the immediate sort of look at something isn't even the right one. Going into it, you should probably expect a large amount of people are not going to like the change of what you did. And sometimes you just need to ride that out a little bit. Now, in the case of some of our failures, the overwhelming hatred meant that they couldn't stick with it long enough before their business was going to go under. But sometimes, like, if you can just ride out, like, yeah, people are upset because they just hate change, but this is for the better. In the long run, it'll work out. Just because the natural inclination of someone is to like, I don't like it. It's not like the old thing. So
yeah,
as long as you can sort of ride out the initial sort of wave of bad press, sometimes in the long run you'll be okay.
Yeah, like a certain amount is to be expected. As you said, Sean, they may be fine with your change. You know, it may not be your change, but it's just change in general.
Right. And I think from my last example of that, at least for me, is the Walmart rebrand that they did. This was way back in 2008. And I remember them coming out and being very underwhelmed by the new logo and the new look. But as we stand here today, it has lasted, and it's pretty much, it's not, I'm trying to think of the right word, like, it's not impactful to me as far as their rebranding efforts went, but I think it was important to Walmart as a whole to get them where they wanted to be, because they wanted to transition from always low prices, essentially being their motto, like we're the cheap place to come to their new sort of slogan, which is save money, live better, which is a completely reframing of that sort of idea. And the logo is not as important to that as everything else around what they're trying to do. So because Walmart is no longer seen, at least I think as much as it was, as the cheap place to go, as more, closer to the Target level as it is now.
While still keeping their old audience in mind. So save money is first. That's the primary message that we want people to get. So they're keeping those folks in mind while then, slightly transitioning to live better. So including maybe some Target shoppers, for example, that can find what they want at Walmart as well.
And something about that too that's interesting. Years ago, I went to Bentonville, which is where Sam Walton, the first store, was. It's where their headquarters is. And there's a museum there, of course, I went to. And it shows the history. And so even though, like, visually they look nothing now like what they used to, you really do get a sense that there are core values baked into their brand, even though they've changed the way they express that. So that, I think that's interesting too. And that's an element of not just we're not alienating the audience, but this is who we are. This is embedded in our DNA, and we're just carrying that out for a new generation.
Exactly. Okay. And to finish off today's episode, we do, of course, have our Molly jokes.
Woo-hoo.
And
Woohoo!
I've got a wide range of them. First one is seasonal. So, what is a witch's favorite subject in school?
No idea.
I don't know.
Spelling.
Oh, it was right,
It's
there.
right
I was
there.
trying
It
to
was
say
right
like
there.
boology, but that didn't quite.
I like that's good.
I was going with algebroom in my mind, and I was like, dial it back. That's not it. Nope. Nope.
The second one is I have a new son, so this is more kid oriented. So I'll need someone to do the other end of a knock knock joke. Who would like to take this?
Me.
All right, Addie. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Cargo.
Cargo who?
No. I'll go who. Cargo beep beep.
Oh,
Cute.
that's
Simple,
great.
Simple. So this last one is more topical and a little bit longer. So a family bought a ranch out west where they intended to raise cattle. Friends visited them and asked if the ranch had a name. Well, said the father, I wanted to name it the Flying Q. My wife suggested the Lazy A. My older son was partial to the Bar J. And my younger son, he liked the Pistol T. So we had a compromise and named it the Flying Q, Lazy A, Bar J, Pistol T Family Ranch. That's quite a mouthful, the friend said. But where's all your cattle? Well, so far none have survived the branding.
Oh, fantastic. That was a
Thank
great
you.
batch, Sean.
Thank you. Credit to Molly. Thank you for listening to this episode of Almost Productive. Before we go, we'd like to give a shout out to our producers Nick and Molly, who work behind the scenes to make this podcast possible. If you'd like to learn more about what we do at New Boston Creative Group, you can reach us at newbostoncreative.com. You can also follow us on social media at New Boston Creative on Instagram and New Boston Creative Group on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you like this episode, please like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with your friends. And if you didn't like the show, feel free to recommend us to your enemies. Tune in next time for some more office shenanigans, thoughts on trending topics, and marketing adjacent insight. Until next time, we hope you have a productive day. Yeah, did that work? I blacked out for 45 minutes.